I don't have a father. That's what my daughter said to me when she opened the door of the $4.5 million mansion I bought for her future, the home meant to protect her long after I was gone. Instead, she stood there in a faded maid's apron, head bowed, voice soft and practiced like she'd rehearsed those words 1,000 times for someone else's approval. Her eyes didn't shine the way Petra's eyes used to. They were clouded, guarded, hollow. She didn't hug me. She didn't smile. She didn't even recognize me. When someone steals your car, you call the police. When someone steals your money, you call your lawyer. But what do you call when someone steals your child's identity, her name, her memories, her entire sense of self? This isn't a story about poor decision-making or generational drift. This is the story of how a predator rewrote my daughter's mind inside the very walls meant to protect her. If you think you understand manipulation, coercion, or control, what happened next will challenge everything you believe. I'm Daniel Whitaker. For 10 years, I lived abroad building an international tech conglomerate, believing I was securing my daughter's future. Last week, I flew home to California unannounced to surprise her. Petra and I spoke regularly. Video calls, messages, birthday check-ins. At least, I thought we did. She told me she was thriving, taking courses, planning to start a design business. I bought her this mansion before I left. Her mother died young, and I wanted Petra to have a place no one could ever take from her. But the woman who answered the door wasn't Petra. When I said her name, she flinched as if it were profanity. My name is Maya, sir. The homeowner isn't here. Before I could speak, a tall woman stepped into view behind her, expression flat, gaze cold, posture rigid with authority. Is there an issue? She asked, placing a hand on Petra's shoulder like she owned her. Petra looked at me with a blank obedience I had never seen in her, not even as a child. That man is confused, the woman said calmly. She has no father. She works here. And my daughter nodded. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding, an argument, or some rebellious phase. This was a takeover, a conditioning, a theft of the most intimate kind, her reality. Let me take you back. Because none of what happened next will make sense unless you understand who Petra was, and how I convinced myself she was safe. Before we proceed, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from to support this channel growth. It's just a push of a button to you, but it means the world to me. Have you done that? Thank you. Now let's get into it. The first thing I noticed was the sound of her footsteps, light, hesitant, almost fearful, padding toward the front door of the $4.5 million mansion I bought her. The home was everything she had dreamed of: garden terraces, glass walls, sun-drenched rooms that caught the Pacific light like polished gold. It was supposed to be her sanctuary, her inheritance, her future. Instead, the door opened, and Petra, my daughter, stood there wearing a maid's apron. Not elegant loungewear. Not the confident business casual outfits she used to love. A maid's apron. Her eyes flicked toward mine, then away, as if direct contact would burn her. Her posture folded inward, shoulders tucked like she expected to be scolded. Her voice was soft, practiced, stripped of personality. Hello, sir. How may I help you? Sir. Petra. I whispered. Her flinch was small but unmistakable. She shook her head, staring at the floor. My name is Maya, she said. I don't have a father. For a moment, everything in me stalled. The breath in my chest, the blood in my veins, the years of memories I'd carried like a private treasure. There are things in this world you're warned about. Losing money, losing health, losing friends. And there are mechanisms for those losses. You call the police when someone steals your car. You call the bank when someone hacks your account. You call your lawyer when someone forges your signature. But who do you call when someone steals your daughter's mind? I tried to speak, but the words collapsed. She didn't even recognize me. After 10 years abroad, building my company's overseas branch, expanding my fortune, securing her future. I expected tears, laughter, maybe anger, but recognition. Not this hollow-eyed stranger. Before I could step forward, a shadow appeared behind her. A tall woman in a sleek black suit, Celeste's assistant if memory served, though I'd only seen her once, years ago. She stepped into view with the effortless confidence of someone accustomed to controlling rooms. "Can I help you?" she asked coolly. "I'm here for my daughter," I said. "Petra Harrington. She lives here." The assistant gave a polite, dismissive smile. "There must be a misunderstanding. The homeowner is out of the country. This is our cleaning staff. Her name is Maya." Petra. No, the woman pretending not to be Petra, kept staring at the floor, trembling almost imperceptibly. She wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't look at the assistant either. She looked at nothing, like a prisoner who had learned the price of eye contact. "This is her house," I said. "I bought it. I wired the payment myself." "I'm sure you believe that," the assistant replied smoothly. "But again, the homeowner is traveling. Maya is clearly working. If you'd like to leave a message." "Petra," I said sharply. "Look at me." She froze. A flicker of something, fear, recognition, longing, sparked in her expression. But then it was smothered. Erased. She swallowed, lowered her head, and whispered, "I don't know who you are. Please, please don't cause trouble." Her voice cracked on the word please. That was when the truth hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mix-up, or a strange coincidence, or some bizarre joke. Someone had gotten to her. Someone had taken her life, her identity, her memories of me, and replaced them with this empty, conditioned performance. Someone had turned my daughter into a maid in her own home. The assistant stepped between us, blocking my view of Petra. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave the premises. If you return uninvited, security will be notified." Security. In my daughter's house. To protect the people who had taken her from me. I stepped back, not because she intimidated me, but because Petra, my Petra, was visibly shaking now. Like any wrong move on my part would punish her, not them. I needed to understand what had been done to her before I made a move. Charging forward blindly would help no one. As I turned away, the memories pressed against me like ghosts rising from the floorboards. Petra as a toddler, paint on her face, laughing as she tried to color the dog blue. Petra at 7, racing her bike downhill, fearless. Petra at 12, curled against me after her mother died, promising she'd always stay close. Petra at 18, brilliant, ambitious, determined to make the world better than she found it. I had been a single father since cancer took her mother. I built my business from scratch while packing school lunches, attending recitals, tutoring math homework long after midnight. My success was for her. Always for her. And when the company demanded I expand overseas, Petra insisted I go. "Dad, you gave up everything for me," she'd said. "Let me give you this. I'll be fine." We talked constantly. Video calls, messages, updates. She always seemed good, busy, happy, independent. But now I understood something horrifying. The calls were controlled, monitored, scripted. Someone had been managing her access. Someone had been preparing this illusion for years. And I'd been blind. Celeste, her mentor, her business partner, her glorified gatekeeper, had subtly nudged me out of Petra's everyday life the moment Petra turned 21. I'd chalked it up to Petra becoming an adult, forming her own life, her own circle. I hadn't noticed the slow walling off, the isolation, the distance that grew drop by drop until 10 years felt like one long manipulated silence. I reached the end of the driveway and turned back to look at the mansion she should have been queen of, not servant to. The curtains shifted. For a split second, Petra peeked out. Her hand pressed against the glass. Her eyes, filled with pain, confusion, and buried recognition, met mine. And then the assistant yanked the curtain closed. That was the moment something inside me hardened beyond breaking. I pulled out my phone. My lawyer answered on the first ring. "Daniel, everything all right?" "No," I said, staring at the house, at the lie, at the theft of my own flesh and blood. "Everything is not all right." My voice was quiet, controlled, deadly calm. "It's time for justice." I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Petra's face, wide, frightened, smothered under someone else's script. By sunrise, the decision was already made. I showered, dressed, gathered every ownership document related to the mansion, and drove back to the coast. If yesterday was shock, today was proof. The moment I pulled up to the front gate, I saw it, taped crookedly across the mailbox like a vandal's warning. Notice of trespass. Private property. Owner, Celeste Ward. Per California Civil Code, unauthorized entry will result in arrest. My jaw clenched so hard I felt something crack behind my molars. Celeste Ward. Of course. I tore the notice down and marched to the gate keypad. My access code, my code, had been changed. Every number I tried, every backup entry I'd set when the house was built, flashed the same message. Access revoked. Property transfer complete. I stood there, a 61-year-old man locked out of the home I'd paid for in full. The Pacific wind rolled in from the cliffs, sharp as knives, but I barely felt it. I pressed a hand to the cool metal gate and breathed slowly, forcing my own pulse to settle. She had turned Petra into a maid, and now she had stolen her home. I called my lawyer, Jordan, before my rage could override my logic. He answered groggily. "Daniel, it's 7. The house is gone." A pause. "What do you mean gone?" I read the notice aloud. Silence stretched across the line. "Daniel, give me an hour. Don't do anything until I call you back." He hung up. I returned to my car and pulled out the thick folder of documents. Deed, transfer records, wire proofs, construction contracts. All legitimate, all flawless, all bearing my signature. Nothing on earth could legally transfer a $4.5 million property to anyone without my knowledge. But an hour later, Jordan called back with the impossible. "Daniel, the records show you sold the house." I felt the world tilt. "That's impossible. According to the county recorder, you transferred ownership to a C. Ward 3 months ago for $1. $1. I whispered. "Yes, there's a signed deed of transfer. And before you say it, yes, it's your signature. At least, it looks like it." A cold numbness spread through me. "You know that's forged." "I do. But on paper, everything is clean. The stamp, the witness signature, the notary record. Daniel, whoever did this didn't just forge documents. They forged an entire event." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Jordan, can you get copies?" "They're already in your inbox," he said. "Start looking. I'm initiating a fraud investigation, but we need evidence. Real evidence. Watch your steps. These people are calculated." These people. Celeste Ward, polished smile, perfect posture, a mastermind wrapped in silk. And behind her, something darker. I opened my tablet and pulled up the PDFs. The signature was mine, down to the slight upward sweep of the H in Harrington. But it wasn't mine. The angle was off by half a degree. The spacing was identical, too identical. No one signs their name the exact same way twice. The notary stamp belonged to a dead notary whose license had expired 5 years ago. The witness signature was a ghost. No public record, no driver's license match, nothing. A manufactured transaction, a stolen home, a stolen identity, a stolen daughter. I closed the file and looked at the mansion again. Sunlight hit the windows, making them shimmer like black mirrors, hiding everything inside. I remembered the day I bought it. Petra had been 23, just finishing her graduate program. I wanted her to have a foundation, something solid, independent of my company, independent of anyone's influence. A place she could grow into her own life. "Dad, it's too much," she'd laughed, standing barefoot in the unfinished living room. "This is like billionaire princess territory." "You deserve something stable," I'd said. "A place no one can ever take from you." The irony twisted in my gut like wire. By late afternoon, after hours of combing through falsified signatures and constructing timelines, I found a pattern. Every entry in the fraudulent packet had been created on the same day, at the same timestamp, from a digital signature generator. A master forgery. Dozens of files crafted in a single sitting. Cold. Systematic. Professional. Celeste wasn't just manipulative. She was orchestrating something larger. Something that needed Petra out of the way, silenced, erased. By sundown, I parked a block away from the mansion and approached on foot. This time, I didn't go to the gate. I stayed low behind the hedges near the side path, where the giant kitchen windows overlooked the service courtyard. And that's where I saw her. Through the wide, spotless glass, Petra moved slowly across the marble floor with a bucket and cloth. Her posture was rigid, military almost. She scrubbed without rhythm, without thought, like someone programmed to repeat a motion until told to stop. Her hair, once bright and curly and always escaping its ponytail, was tied back in a tight, severe bun. She didn't hum. She didn't speak. She didn't even look up. She was living like a servant in her own home. I felt something hot and primal rise in my throat. Not rage. Something older. The instinct of a father watching his child dismantled piece by piece. She stood and carried a basket of sheets down the hallway. Her face was blank. Her gait robotic. Not my girl at all. Then headlights swept across the courtyard. A white luxury coupe glided up the drive, sleek, predatory, expensive even by Malibu standards. The car door opened. Celeste Ward stepped out. Immaculate. Controlled. Dressed in a white silk blouse that glowed under the evening lights like the uniform of an angel sculpted from ice. She didn't knock. She didn't call out. She simply walked inside like a queen returning to her palace. And Petra, my daughter, immediately hurried to the entrance hall and bowed her head like a servant greeting her master. I pressed a hand against the cold stone wall, steadying myself. This house no longer belonged to Petra. This life no longer belonged to her. But I was going to take it back. Every inch of it. By the time Celeste's white coupe disappeared down the drive, I already knew sleep wasn't in my future. I went home, brewed a pot of coffee that tasted like burnt wires, and opened my laptop. If I wanted answers, I had to start with the woman controlling my daughter's mind. Celeste Ward. Her name was too clean, too polished, too carefully maintained to be real. People who operate in shadows don't leave fingerprints. They leave curated narratives. I dug through university archives first. Stanford, PhD in sociological conditioning, emphasis on group behavioral compliance. Her dissertation was sealed. That was my first red flag. Then government records. Employment history. Committee transcripts. She'd been recruited into a federal behavioral sciences division straight out of grad school, an elite think tank analyzing methods of influence and obedience formation in containment priority environments. In plain English, she studied how to persuade people to obey. 6 years ago, she resigned quietly. No statements. No interviews. No digital footprint afterward. It was as if she'd vanished from the grid. But people like Celeste don't vanish. They transition. By midday, I had one conclusion. Celeste Ward wasn't just a manipulator. She was trained to reshape the human mind. And she had done it to Petra. That thought ripped something open in me, something dark and volatile, but I suppressed it. Emotion was useless. Precision was what Petra needed now. I made one more call, someone I hadn't spoken to since the early years of my career. Someone who knew how these psychological operatives worked. Paul Huxley, former federal investigator, retired but still sharper than anyone in the bureau. He answered on the second ring. Daniel, didn't expect to hear from you. You still owe me lunch. I need information, I said. Now. There must have been something in my voice because he didn't joke again. We met at a small diner near the harbor, the kind of place where retirees linger over black coffee and no one listens to anyone else's business. Paul slid into the booth across from me, studying my face before I said a word. You look like you've seen a ghost. I've seen something worse. I laid everything out, the door, the apron, the lie, the forged deed, Celeste's arrival. When I said her name, Paul's whole expression changed. The humor drained from him, replaced by a cold, assessing stare. Celeste Ward, he repeated, voice low. Damn. I hoped she'd disappeared. You know her. He exhaled sharply. Not personally, but I know her work. She was part of an off-record program the government buried years ago. Behavioral conditioning, identity erosion, emotional compliance. They tested models for soft control, methods to make people willingly surrender autonomy. I felt something nauseating churn in my stomach. And this woman had access to that? She helped build half of it, he said. They shut the program down because it was too effective and too dangerous. People broke. Minds collapsed. Some subjects never got themselves back. My hands curled into fists under the table. Paul, she has my daughter. He nodded grimly. This isn't a simple case of fraud, Daniel. This is captivity. Not physical chains, psychological ones. She'll keep Petra pliable, obedient, dependent. And if Petra pushes back, Celeste will escalate. Escalate how? He stared at me for a long moment, by erasing whatever is left. That nearly sent me out of the booth. Paul reached out, steadying me with a firm hand. But, he said quietly, if your daughter still has fragments of memory, we can rebuild from that. You have to gather evidence, not guesses, proof. And you have to do it before Celeste decides Petra is a liability. I didn't need to ask what happened to liabilities. That night, I went back to the mansion. I didn't break in through the windows. I knew the alarm grid too well. The design had been custom-built for Petra's privacy, meaning there were blind spots at the far side of the estate. I slipped through the hedges, bypassed the motion sensors, and reached the service entry. One quick bypass of the outdated lock, and I was inside. The public areas were immaculate, too immaculate. A sterile environment is easier for conditioning. No clutter, no stimuli, no reminders of individuality. The first thing I found was a stack of mail on the granite countertop. To Maya Ward. Maya! Celeste's manufactured identity for my daughter. The name she'd been forced to speak at the door. Electric fury surged through me, but I stayed focused. Next, on a corkboard near the pantry, I found a printed schedule. Daily obligation roster. M. Ward. 6 o'clock, wake. 6:10. Silence hour. 7 o'clock. Begin surface cleaning. 10 o'clock. Food prep. 12:30. Serve lunch. 1400 hours. Laundry rotation. 1600 hours. Compliance review. 1800 hours. Evening chores. 2100 hours. Lights out. Compliance review. God help me. I moved deeper through the kitchen. Taped to the inside of the pantry door was something even worse, a laminated sheet titled Behavioral Expectations. The text was small but unmistakable. Rules for speech, posture, tone, even eye movement. Rule 3. Avoid direct eye contact with household superiors. Rule 7. Personal opinions are prohibited. Rule 11. If confusion occurs, remain silent until corrected. Rule 14. Emotional expression is unnecessary. I closed my eyes, took a breath, opened them again. This was more than control. It was systematic deconstruction. Then I heard it, soft at first, floating from the laundry hall. A sound I hadn't heard since Petra was small enough to fall asleep on my chest after nightmares. A hum. Gentle. Off-key. A lullaby. The same lullaby I used to sing to her when she was 6 and her mother had just died. I froze. Petra's voice drifted through the corridor, quiet, uncertain, but human. Not robotic. Not erased. Underneath the conditioning, my daughter was still there. She hadn't disappeared. She hadn't surrendered. She was humming because something inside her still remembered who she was. I pressed my palm to the wall, fighting back the storm rising inside me. Petra was alive under the surface. She was fighting, and I would fight with her. Celeste had stolen her home. She had stolen her identity. But she had not stolen her soul. Not yet. And I intended to make sure she never would. The melody faded, and I followed it deeper into the hall, stepping silently along the polished hardwood as if the floor itself might betray me. Petra's humming had stopped, replaced by the soft rustling of fabric being folded with mechanical precision. I could picture her, eyes down, shoulders tense, movements programmed. But that lullaby proved something Celeste never intended. Petra was still fighting somewhere behind the fog. I had to find more. In the laundry room, everything was arranged with surgical exactness. Towels stacked by size, detergents aligned like soldiers, the air smelling faintly of bleach and lavender, the kind of scent meant to soothe or to disguise something darker. I opened cabinets, careful not to disturb anything. Nothing. Then I tried the small drawer under the folding counter. At first glance, it was empty. But when I ran my fingers along the underside of the wooden lip, something rough scraped my skin. Carved into the wood, small, uneven, hurried, were 2 letters. D.W. My initials. She had scratched them there, knowing someone else might find it, knowing Celeste might punish her for leaving any trace of her true life. And still she carved it. A message. A plea. A reminder. Petra hadn't forgotten me. I closed the drawer gently, swallowing hard. If she left one clue, she might have left more. I moved through the hallway with a new awareness, scanning the ordinary with suspicion. Every object might hold something hidden. Celeste was meticulous, but Petra, my brilliant, stubborn Petra, had always been better at slipping through cracks. In the kitchen, I spotted the first anomaly, a sticky note tucked behind a flour canister, barely visible. I eased it out carefully. One word, scribbled hastily. Riviera. The name of the tiny family restaurant Petra and I used to visit every Friday after her therapy sessions. Cheap pasta, cracked leather booths, a jukebox that never worked, but it had been ours, a safe place after her mother died. Petra must have known no one else would recognize it. Another breadcrumb. Another spark of defiance. I slid the note into my pocket and kept searching. Upstairs felt colder, airless. The mansion was too quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't come from peace but control. I paused outside Petra's former bedroom door, now labeled supplies, with a printed sign taped over the wood. My chest tightened. I stepped inside. The room was gutted, stripped of personality. White walls. Bare mattress on a metal frame. A single folded blanket. No photos, no clothes, no books. The life Petra once had here had been erased with obsessive efficiency. But not completely. Something flickered at the corner of the vent panel. A tiny edge of paper. My heart kicked hard. I knelt, unscrewed the panel with my keys, and eased it open. Inside the vent was a small, crinkled photograph, the edges worn from being handled too many times. It was of us. Petra at 7 years old, gap-toothed, arms around my neck. My hand on her back, smiling the way only a father can smile when the world still feels conquerable. She'd hidden it here. She'd kept it. She'd risked everything for this single reminder of who she truly was. I pressed the photo to my forehead, just for a moment, grounding myself with the memory it held. I didn't have the luxury of breaking down. Not yet. I replaced the vent cover and rose quietly. That's when I heard footsteps. Light. Cautious. Not Celeste. The rhythm was too soft. Petra. She stepped into the doorway, eyes wide, breath quick, hands trembling against her apron. For a moment, she looked like the girl I raised. Terrified, yes, but present. Dad! The word almost slipped out of her before she clamped her lips shut. I stood very still, afraid any sudden movement might send her retreating into the fog again. Petra, I whispered. It's okay. It's me. She darted forward, clutching my sleeve, urgency burning through the haze in her eyes. You shouldn't be here, she breathed. She sees everything. Her voice trembled, but underneath it, beneath the conditioning, the programming, I heard my daughter. My real daughter. Smart. Fierce. Afraid, but not defeated. Petra, listen to me, I said softly. I'm going to get you out. I know you remember. I know you're trying to. A sharp, precise sound cut through the air behind her. A heel. On tile. Petra froze. Her eyes widened in terror as she stepped back, releasing my sleeve as if it had burned her. Her face drained of expression, gaze dropping to the floor, shoulders folding inward. Celeste Ward appeared around the corner like a shadow solidifying into a person, calm, perfectly composed, the faintest suggestion of a smile curving her lips. There you are, she said to Petra, voice silky. Time for recalibration. Then she spoke a single phrase, quiet, rhythmic, practiced. Petra's entire body slackened. The spark vanished from her eyes like a candle pinched out. Her breathing evened, her posture corrected itself into a subservient stance. The transformation wasn't natural. It was orchestrated. Celeste brushed her fingers against Petra's arm. Back to your duties, Maya. Petra nodded once, mechanical, and moved away without looking at me again. Celeste glanced at me over her shoulder, a warning without words, before disappearing down the hall with her. I stood rooted to the spot, my pulse hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Petra had been seconds away from breaking through. Seconds away from telling me something important. And Celeste knew it. She had eyes everywhere. I stayed only long enough to slip quietly out of the house, every step fueled not by fear anymore, but by a cold, growing resolve. Outside, the sky was turning a bruised shade of dusk. I sat in my car for a long moment before calling my lawyer, my voice low and controlled. He didn't start with pleasantries. Daniel, I've found more. I braced myself. Her accounts are empty, he said. Every trust transfer rerouted into shell companies linked to Celeste Ward. And there's more, you need to hear this. What? Petra's medical records. She's been prescribed memory-impairing sedatives for nearly 2 years. None of it authorized. None of it legal. My grip tightened around the steering wheel. He continued, voice dropping. This isn't just financial exploitation. This is systematic identity dismantling. I already knew. I had seen it. And now I had proof. Daniel, he said, We need to involve federal enforcement. We will, I replied. But first, I need one thing. What's that? The truth inside that house. Because somewhere beneath the conditioning, Petra was waiting for me, leaving breadcrumbs, trusting I would return. And I would, not as the man who left a decade ago, but as the father she remembered in secret. Daniel had thought he'd reached the bottom of his nightmares already, but the house kept revealing darker layers, like a wound that only deepened the more he tried to clean it. After Petra's whispered plea, after Celeste's chilling trigger phrase that folded his daughter into silence like paper, he knew the answers were buried somewhere inside the mansion. And Paul Huxley, grizzled, slow-moving, but sharp as a scalpel, insisted the place had a basement Celeste didn't want anyone to find. So just before midnight, they returned. The mansion was quiet in a way that didn't feel natural, like silence had been trained into the walls. Daniel used Petra's old window key to slip inside. Paul followed with a flashlight wrapped in cloth to dim the beam. "Show me the door," Paul whispered. Daniel nodded. He had found it earlier, a steel panel behind a false wine rack. It looked like something a paranoid billionaire would install, but Celeste was far more dangerous than paranoid. He slid the rack aside and pressed on the cold metal. It didn't give. Paul knelt and examined the seam. Electronic lock. Industrial grade. Daniel pushed his hands into his hair. "We're wasting time. Petra sleeps down here sometimes. I've seen her come up disoriented." Paul didn't hesitate. He removed a slim black device from his coat, an old federal bypass tool that should not, by any law, still exist. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked. "After you," Paul said. The door opened into darkness that smelled faintly of antiseptic and fear. They descended the narrow stairwell, each step groaning. At the bottom, Paul flicked the flashlight on, and Daniel felt his breath collapse in his chest. The basement was a corridor of cruelty. To the left, a soundproof chamber lined with beige foam panels, a single metal chair bolted to the floor. Speakers mounted at all four corners. Daniel stepped inside, and the silence swallowed him so completely he felt his heartbeat hammering in his ears. "This is sensory isolation," Paul said quietly behind him. "Used to break down temporal awareness. Makes you open to suggestion." Daniel backed out, stomach clenching. To the right, a sleep cycle manipulation room. A narrow cot beneath a tangle of soft glow bulbs, each programmed to mimic sunrise, sunset, and artificial distortions between. A monitor displayed rotating sleep statistics. "She was controlling Petra's circadian rhythm," Paul muttered. "Disorientation improves compliance rates." Daniel didn't want to hear the science. His eyes were burning. Farther down the corridor, another door was cracked open, revealing a small chamber with a mounted screen looping a video. He stepped closer. A calm voice in the audio, female, monotone, repeated affirmations that made his skin crawl. "You are not who you were. You are safe when you obey. You remember only what is given to you." Images of empty hallways flashed between segments. Sometimes, a silhouette. Sometimes, a face blurred deliberately. "This is conditioning, emotional reframing," Paul said. "Classic identity dismantling." Daniel flinched. She made her watch this? She made her live this. The next room gutted Daniel entirely. Metal drawers lined the wall, each labeled with dates. He pulled one open. Medication logs. Dosages. Schedules. Prescriptions Petra had never authorized, and certainly never needed. He scanned one page and felt his throat tighten. Memory-inhibiting sedatives. Dissociative enhancers. Compliance stabilizers. And next to many of the entries, Petra's initials forged in crude imitation. His knees softened. "She drugged my daughter," he whispered. "She drugged her, every day." Paul put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "We're documenting everything. This is evidence of coercive psychological torture. She will not get away with this. But Daniel wasn't listening anymore. His eyes had landed on a small monitor embedded in the wall, buttons worn from repeated use. Paul pressed play. The screen flickered, and Petra appeared. Not the stiff, robotic Petra he had seen recently, but a girl trembling, eyes wide with terror, hair hanging in damp strings. She was in the isolation chamber, repeating phrases through tears. I am Maya Ward. I belong here. I obey because it keeps me safe. At one point she choked, covered her face, and said, Dad, please, I don't want to. The footage cut abruptly, replaced by a static frame that pulsed like a heartbeat. Daniel's legs gave out. He hit the ground hard, palms scraping against the cold concrete, but he barely noticed. Paul crouched beside him. You're seeing the method. This wasn't random. This was systematic dismantling. Daniel didn't respond. Grief and rage tangled inside him until he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. They moved on because they had to, not because Daniel was ready. At the end of the corridor was an unmarked door with a keypad. Paul's tool made quick work of it, and when the lock disengaged, the smell of dust and paper drifted out. Inside was a small office, neat, sterile. A single safe was bolted to the floor. Paul cracked his knuckles. Give me a minute. Daniel paced, fists shaking, until the safe finally clunked open. Inside, a thick ledger, neatly organized folders, a stack of photographs that made Daniel's blood run cold. The ledger was worse than anything he'd imagined. Names, dozens, dates, psychological profiles, and a column labeled Outcome. Some read integrated, others read obedient, a few read missing, one read neutralized. Beside each name, assets had been transferred, properties, accounts, businesses. A pipeline of stolen lives fueling a fortune. Paul exhaled sharply. This is an exploitation network. Celeste isn't working alone, and she's been at this for years. Daniel stared at the photos. Some were of men and women he didn't recognize. But some, he recognized from news stories, the missing, the lost, the tragedies that had seemed random. And at the bottom of the pile, a photo of Petra. Her expression blank, her posture controlled. A tag beneath it, Subject 31. Integration in progress. Daniel felt something ancient and furious rise inside him. This ends now, he said, voice low, steady, lethal. Paul nodded. Then we take this to the authorities. No, Daniel said, gripping the ledger. First, I take back my daughter. The walls seemed to close in, as if the entire house understood a war had been declared. And for the first time, Daniel welcomed it. Daniel had barely stepped out of the mansion's shadow when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He didn't need to guess. He answered without speaking. Celeste Ward's voice slid through the speaker like cold metal. Daniel, you've had a productive night. He froze on the sidewalk. The moon cast long, thin shadows across the street, and for a moment he felt as though the entire neighborhood was holding its breath. You've been watching me, he said. Yes, she replied, calm, clinical, almost bored. You entered my home at 12:14 a.m., descended into the restricted level at 12:21, accessed my research chambers at 12:31, and opened my private safe at 12:44. You really should be more careful. Paul Huxley moves slower these days. Age is such a burden. Daniel's fingers tightened around the phone. You tortured my daughter. I corrected her, Celeste said. Petra had structural weaknesses, excessive attachment, unresolved grief, a dependency on your approval. She was defective. She clung to an identity that was limiting her potential. His pulse hammered. You stole her life. No, Celeste said, voice softening as though instructing a patient child. I rebuilt it. Petra required identity restructuring, a clean relational slate, a defined hierarchy, order. She is better now, obedient, focused, stabilized. Daniel nearly crushed the phone. You think you're untouchable. She exhaled lightly, as if amused. I am not untouchable. I am simply correct. And correction survives scrutiny. Her arrogance wasn't a crack in her facade, it was the facade. She believed what she was saying. Believed it so deeply she didn't hear herself confess. Daniel kept her talking. What do you want? What I have, she replied. A functioning household. A structured subject. And your absence. You won't keep her. You misunderstand, she said. She is no longer yours. Petra Ward is gone. Maya Ward remains. Daniel felt something inside him go dangerously still. Celeste continued, unaware she had stepped too far. Her regression moments are expected. Early-stage restructuring always involves memory echoes. They will fade. Especially once I relocate her. Daniel's blood chilled. Relocate. Yes, before you become more troublesome. She paused. Good night, Daniel. The line went dead. He stood alone beneath the street lamp, fists shaking, not out of fear, but fury sharpened into purpose. Celeste had just admitted to identity tampering, captivity, relocation intent, and surveillance. And she had done it because she believed no one would ever challenge her. But she had miscalculated. A rustle drew his attention. Across the street, a delivery van pulled away from the curb. Daniel frowned. He hadn't ordered anything. Something fluttered in the wind at his feet. A single sheet of paper. He picked it up. A cleaning invoice. Generic. Meaningless at first glance. But the handwriting, not printed, was familiar. Too familiar. Petra's looping cursive. His heart clenched. He stepped under the streetlight and turned the page over. More handwriting. At first it looked like random shorthand, but then he recognized it. Her old way of hiding notes from babysitters when she wanted to surprise him with drawings. A childhood code she never should have remembered under Celeste's conditioning. He decoded it slowly, breath tightening with every letter. She'll move me soon. Please find me before she erases me. Dad, I know you. Please hurry. For a moment, Daniel couldn't breathe. Petra wasn't lost. She wasn't gone. She was fighting from the inside, pushing through sedation, conditioning, whatever horrors Celeste had inflicted. She remembered him. And she was terrified. He ran back to his car, pulled out his phone, and dialed his lawyer. Listen carefully, Daniel said, voice low, steady. She knows I broke in. She's monitoring the property. She plans to relocate Petra. And I have proof, her voice on a recorded call. He glanced down at the voice memo icon, still glowing. He hadn't realized he'd pressed it the moment Celeste started talking. This is enough to trigger federal jurisdiction. The lawyer hesitated. Daniel, this is bigger than property fraud. This is torture, identity tampering, coercive captivity, Daniel said. Just make the call. Now. Within minutes, the lawyer confirmed he was escalating the matter. Then Daniel called Paul. She contacted you, Paul said immediately. She did more than that. She confessed. There was a long pause. I told you, this woman isn't operating alone. A relocation means there's an entire pipeline in place. Daniel looked again at Petra's message, the ink slightly smudged from where she must have written it in haste. We're not letting her disappear. You won't, Paul said. But we need backup. Let the feds move first. They'll already be listening after what you reported. Daniel's voice lowered. She said she'd move Petra soon. That means we're out of time, Paul replied. Stay alert. The FBI will reach out. And Daniel, don't go near the house again tonight. Daniel didn't respond. He stared at the mansion glowing faintly at the hilltop, every window a silent warning. He'd already broken into its shadows, already seen the horrific machinery behind its polished walls. He knew what Celeste was capable of, and what she was preparing to do next. But Petra's message kept echoing in his mind. Dad, I know you. Please hurry. He stood alone in the darkness, the invoice folded tightly in his hand, the weight of it almost unbearable. He didn't know where Celeste planned to take her. He didn't know when. But he knew the truth now. Petra's memories weren't gone. They were bruised, buried, clawing their way back through the fog. And that meant there was still time. His phone buzzed again. A new number. This one official, terse, government-coded. Mr. Ward, a firm voice said when he answered. We've been briefed. We need to speak with you immediately. Daniel straightened, the night sharpening around him. The war for his daughter had just moved into its next phase. And now, finally, he wasn't fighting alone. Celeste had always been meticulous, but tonight her movements shifted into something sharper, swift, surgical, final. From the moment Daniel reported her call, from the moment federal eyes turned toward the mansion on the hill, she felt the shift in the air. The net was closing. Her precision no longer bought time. It demanded acceleration. She moved Petra before dawn. 2 fake passports. 1 sedative kit. A flight manifest scrubbed clean. Dubai. A jurisdiction where recovery would be impossible, extradition unlikely, and a single woman traveling with her assistant would draw no suspicion at all. Time to go, Celeste told Petra in a gentle voice that masked the violence she had orchestrated behind it. Petra barely stirred. Only a faint flutter of her eyelashes suggested she heard anything at all. By the time the first unmarked SUVs rolled up the mansion's private drive, Celeste's white luxury car was already slicing through the pre-dawn darkness. The FBI moved fast, faster than Daniel expected. Black vests, clipped commands, a tactical sweep through the rooms that once held Petra's laughter. Doors kicked open, basement lights flooding horrors into plain view. But they were seconds, minutes too late. Clear. Upstairs secured. No sign of the target. Daniel's stomach sank. She's gone. She moved her. I told you she'd. Sir, an agent interrupted, holding up a hand. We're not done here. But Daniel knew. He felt it the way a father feels the exact moment the world snatches his child out of reach. She wasn't here. Not in the chambers. Not in her room. Not in the place she was forced to call home. He scanned the kitchen on instinct. Every surface, every corner. Petra had been leaving him clues for days. She wouldn't stop now, not if she was fighting through sedation, not if she was losing time. Something caught the light, a ceramic plate on the counter, overturned as though dropped. Daniel lifted it, and his breath hitched. On the underside, scratched with something sharp, were 3 letters. SFO. His pulse thundered in his ears. The airport. She's taking her to San Francisco International. Paul, who had arrived moments behind the FBI team, stepped forward. That's an extraction code. They're leaving the country. Then we're not standing here, Daniel snapped, already heading for the door. We're going after her. The lead FBI agent didn't argue. San Francisco Airport breathed with its usual morning chaos. Rolling suitcases, shifting crowds, the metallic tang of jet fuel threading through recycled air. But beneath it all, Petra's mind strained to surface through the fog. She stumbled into an airport restroom, gripping the sink as the world swayed. The sedatives blurred the tiled floor into watery shapes. She blinked until her reflection steadied, pale, trembling, but hers. And then she remembered Daniel's voice, his face, her name. Not Maya. Petra. Her fingers, shaking violently, dug through her apron pocket until they found the small prepaid phone she had hidden days earlier, hidden for this exact moment, the one Celeste had never anticipated because she believed obedience erased ingenuity. Petra pressed the button. The line rang once. "Dad!" Her whisper trembled, almost drowned beneath the running faucet. "I'm here." Daniel's voice, raw, frantic, broke through. "Petra? Petra, where are you?" "In the airport." She clutched the sink harder. Her knees buckled. "I remember everything." A stall door creaked behind her. Footsteps. Petra's breath hitched. "She's coming." Static swallowed her words. Then the line died. Daniel didn't remember the drive. Only the roar of blood in his ears and the silent, united intensity of the FBI convoy barreling behind him. As they crossed the Bay Bridge, the morning sun cut across the water, sharp and blinding. He barely noticed. His phone rang, an FBI update. "Sir, we're scanning passenger logs." 2 travelers checked into an outbound flight using forged documents matching Celeste's patterns. Destination not confirmed yet, but the time frame fits. "She has Petra drugged," Daniel said. "If she gets her through customs." "She won't," the agent promised. "We have teams moving in on every terminal." Paul's voice cracked through Daniel's speaker next. "Hold yourself together. She called you. That means she's slipping the conditioning. She's fighting." "I know," Daniel whispered. "That's what scares me." He stepped on the gas. SFO's Terminal A erupted into coordinated chaos as agents flooded the entrances. Travelers froze mid-step, some pulling children close, others whispering in confusion. Overhead, announcements droned on, baggage reminders, boarding notices, all eerily normal against the tension rising through the airport. Daniel ignored all of it. He ran. Past the security line. Past startled travelers. Past TSA officers rushing out of their booths. "Petra!" he called, voice cracking through the cavernous terminal. Agents fanned out. Bathrooms. Boarding gates. Security checkpoints. Daniel reached the row of restrooms just as an agent signaled him. "This one," the agent said. "We found signs of movement, someone leaving in a hurry." Daniel pushed the door open. A phone lay on the floor, screen shattered. Petra's. Water still trickled from the faucet, dripping in slow, rhythmic beats that echoed off white tile. "She was here," Daniel whispered. "She was right here." Before despair could root, another agent sprinted toward them from the terminal's far end. "Gate A12, he shouted. "We've got a visual." Celeste Ward approaching pre-boarding with a young woman in uniform. "The girl is unsteady." Daniel didn't wait for permission. He ran. The world narrowed to a single hallway, a single row of gates, a single desperate countdown. Every second mattered. Every breath. Every step. He felt the distance like pain. And then, Gate A12. Crowds parted. Agents surged. And Daniel saw them. Celeste, calm, composed, her hand guiding Petra forward as if she were escorting a sleepwalker. Petra's face was pale, eyes half-lidded, body swaying with each step, but her head turned slightly, as if she felt him there. Daniel shouted her name. Celeste's head snapped toward him. The last moment before the confrontation was a suspended heartbeat, a frozen sliver of time in which all the months, all the terror, all the conditioning came crashing into the open. And Petra, barely conscious, barely standing, lifted her eyes just enough for him to see recognition flicker through them. Then the agents closed in. The airport became a hunting ground. No alarms blared, no dramatic sirens split the air. Just the pounding of boots against polished tile, the clipped commands of federal agents, and the cold, calculated precision of a chase that had moved from shadows into daylight. Daniel ran with them, weaving through startled travelers who pressed themselves against walls, clutching suitcases and children as a swarm of jackets with FBI lettering tore past. "Gate A12, she's moving!" an agent shouted into his comm. Another responded, "Visual on cameras, suspect pushing the girl in a wheelchair." "Repeat, Petra is in a wheelchair. Appears semi-conscious." Daniel's chest constricted. "Petra, in a wheelchair. Drugged so deeply she couldn't walk. Keep eyes on her," he barked, voice hoarse. Security footage flickered on handheld devices as agents ran, Celeste gliding through Terminal A with eerie composure, her hand on the wheelchair handles, her posture relaxed, as if escorting a relative instead of smuggling a stolen life out of the country. Petra slumped forward, arms limp, head bobbing with each push of the wheels. They gained ground, but Celeste never stopped moving. She cut through crowds effortlessly, choosing paths that made pursuit harder, crowded hallways, clusters of luggage, unwieldy strollers, anything that slowed the agents by a half-second. Even sedated, Petra seemed to sense something. Her head tilted once, as if searching for the voice she'd heard earlier. Her lips parted, but no sound escaped. At the end of the terminal, Celeste paused at a corner, glanced up at a security camera, and smiled. Daniel saw it live on the agent's screen, a small, chilling smile. She knew she was being watched. She didn't care. "She's turning left toward the international wing," the agent holding the device yelled. "Gate A18. Cut her off at the escalators," another shouted. Daniel sprinted faster. The international wing curved into a long, sunlit corridor. At the end, a wide glass wall revealed taxiing planes, their engines humming like distant thunder. Gate A18 sat on the right, its display flashing. "Boarding, Dubai. A final call." Celeste pushed Petra harder now, abandoning pretense. Her pace sharpened, her expression tightening for the first time. Then she saw them. Agents pouring into the hallway from both sides. A wall of authority closing in. Daniel at the center, fury radiating off him like heat. Celeste didn't run. She didn't panic. She didn't even frown. She simply positioned herself behind the wheelchair, lowered her chin, and whispered something into Petra's ear, too soft to hear, too sharp not to wound. Then she took one single step backward. "Federal agents," a voice thundered. "Celeste Ward, stand down." Travelers gasped, some ducking behind seats, others fumbling for phones. The terminal, moments before just another busy corridor, became frozen under the weight of confrontation. Celeste raised her hands slowly, but not in surrender. "I'm not resisting," she said calmly. "There's no need for aggression. The girl is ill. I'm her guardian. Step away from her. Now." Celeste tilted her head, studying them like specimens. "You don't understand. She's in the middle of treatment. Removing her will cause catastrophic psychological regression. Back away from the wheelchair." Still she didn't move. Her eyes found Daniel, and she smiled faintly, confident, patronizing, utterly unafraid. "Mr. Whitaker, you could have avoided all of this. Petra was unstable long before I began her reformation. You should be thanking me." Daniel lunged forward, but an agent held him back. Celeste's voice softened further. "She always cried for you, you know. At night, clinging to the past like a child clutching a broken toy. I helped her let go." Daniel's fists clenched. "You tortured her." "I corrected her," Celeste replied. "Her identity was defective. I rebuilt it." "Move away from her or we move you," an agent warned. For the first time, Celeste's expression cracked. Just a flicker, a crease of annoyance that her performance wasn't working. She stepped back. Agents closed in, weapons drawn but lowered, forming a tight semicircle around her. Celeste lifted her chin defiantly. "You're making a mistake. My work is sanctioned. It's better than sanctioned. It's necessary. Turn around," an agent ordered. She didn't. They turned her by force. Handcuffs clicked around her wrists. And still she spoke, voice smooth and chilling. "She'll never be the same. You can't undo the conditioning. She'll forget you again. They always do." Daniel stepped past her, not sparing her a look. He dropped to his knees beside the wheelchair. "Petra," he breathed, touching her cheek. Her eyes fluttered open, blurry, unfocused, but aware. Then she saw him. Real recognition, raw, terrified, lit her face. She burst into tears. "I didn't forget you," she whispered, voice splintered with fear. She made me pretend." Daniel gathered her gently, supporting her as her body trembled. I know, sweetheart. I'm here. I was scared she'd hurt you." The words tumbled out between sobs. "She said she would. She said, if I remembered you, if I looked at you, she'd erase everything." "She's gone now," he said, voice breaking. "She can't touch you. Not anymore." Behind them, Celeste's voice rose over the agents, calm, confident, delusional even in defeat. "You think this stops with me?" she called out. "There are others. There will always be others. You've saved one girl, Daniel. Just one." "Get her out of here," an agent snapped, dragging Celeste toward the terminal's secured exit. But her influence dissolved with every step she was forced to take. Travelers stared. Agents watched her like a threat caged. Her network, her empire, was already collapsing as digital warrants rippled through systems, freezing accounts and raiding properties. Daniel didn't hear any of it. He was holding Petra, his Petra, as she clung to him, her tears soaking into his shirt, her voice shaking as she whispered again and again, "You found me, Dad. You found me." And for the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to believe she would come back. The months that followed were quiet in a way Daniel hadn't experienced in years. No alarms, no investigators knocking at his door, no coded messages slipped beneath his windshield wipers. Just the steady rhythm of healing, slow, uneven, but real. Petra moved through the world differently now, cautious in her steps yet determined in her gaze, as if every day she was reclaiming one small corner of herself. Therapy became her anchor. Twice a week, she sat with specialists trained in trauma-induced identity fragmentation, piecing together the fractures Celeste had engineered. Some days she emerged light, hopeful. Other days she walked out with trembling hands and silent tears, but with Daniel waiting outside every single time, no matter how long the sessions lasted. He was learning too. Learning not to hover, not to smother, but to be there, solid and steady, the way a father should have been before everything fell apart. He had apologized once, one raw, quiet night when they sat on the porch watching the lights of the city flicker below. Petra had rested her head on her arms, listening. When he finished, she told him she didn't need perfect. She just needed him to stay. And so he did. The investigation that followed Celeste Ward's arrest unraveled wider than anyone predicted. The files Daniel and Paul had found in the basement were only the threshold. With forensic teams, cybercrime units, and specialized psychologists analyzing every scrap of data, a horrifying map emerged. Victims coerced, identities rewritten, assets stolen, entire lives bent until they broke. But threaded among the evidence were clues Petra herself had smuggled out over the years. Tiny, desperate signals buried in phone logs, flagged transactions, even library receipts. They'd seemed like noise at the time, but in hindsight, they were the breadcrumbs that helped investigators find the others. Several victims were located across the country, dazed but alive, and each one whispered the same fragment when they finally found safety. She had a girl in the house who fought back. Petra didn't know their names, Only their stories. Half-remembered cries in the walls, muffled footsteps above, the presence of others who were erased before she ever saw their faces. But knowing the network had been dismantled because she refused to fully break gave her a strange kind of peace, bittersweet and heavy, but real. In the aftermath, Petra discovered she couldn't just walk away from the wreckage. She had survived something engineered to erase her. That meant something. So, after long discussions with her therapists and Daniel, she began training as a peer counselor for survivors of coercive psychological abuse. She attended seminars, shadowed clinicians, wrote essays on identity resilience and post-captivity reconstruction. The work was exhausting, sometimes re-traumatizing, but it anchored her in purpose. For the first time since childhood, she felt the shape of a future she wanted to step into. Daniel, meanwhile, threw himself into action. With settlements from the civil case and contributions from advocacy groups, he helped launch a national initiative targeted at modern coercive influence networks, groups operating behind private walls, manipulating vulnerable people for profit, power, or twisted ideology. The project provided legal support, emergency extraction teams, and grants for survivor therapy. It was his way of atoning for the years he thought Petra had simply disappeared into adulthood, while in reality she had been fighting for her mind in a mansion no one knew to look inside. Still, there remained one final thing Petra needed to do, something no therapist or counselor could walk her through. She told Daniel one morning, over the soft clatter of breakfast dishes, that she was ready to return to the house. Not to dwell in it, not to forgive it, but to face it on her terms. Daniel's hand tightened slightly around his coffee mug, but he nodded. Whatever she needed, he would be there. They arrived on a fog-damp afternoon. The mansion stood silent, stripped of police tape but still under government hold, the windows dark, the gardens overgrown from months of abandonment. There was nothing alive in its presence anymore. No hum of hidden machines, no muffled commands, no footsteps echoing where they shouldn't. Just a structure, emptied of the cruelty that once pulsed through it. Petra walked ahead, slow but unhesitating. Daniel kept a respectful distance, letting her move as she needed. She pushed open the heavy front door, its hinges groaning like a reluctant memory. The foyer spread before them in muted light, dust catching in the air. Petra inhaled deeply, then stepped inside. She moved through each room with deliberate calm. The dining area where she'd been forced to sit for identity reinforcement meals. The hallway where she once bumped into Daniel in secret, whispering warnings through the fog of conditioning. The pantry with the regiment taped to its door, now removed, leaving only faint adhesive residue. She paused at the staircase and looked up, her expression softening with something Daniel couldn't quite decipher. "This house wasn't mine," she said quietly, half to herself. "She tried to make it my whole world. But it never was." They descended into the basement last. The compliance rooms had been stripped of equipment, leaving only sterile walls and outlines on the floor where machines once stood. Petra traced one outline with the toe of her shoe, then straightened, exhaling long and slow. "This was where I thought I was disappearing," she murmured. "But I wasn't. Not really." Daniel stepped closer then, unable to keep distance any longer. "No," he said softly. "You never disappeared." She turned to him, eyes clear, not clouded, not confused. Clear in a way he had waited months to see. She walked past him toward the stairs, toward the light filtering in through the open front door. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at him, her posture steady, her voice soft but unwavering. "Dad," she said, with the warmth of certainty. "I know exactly who you are." And for the first time since she'd been taken, since her identity had been shattered and rearranged, Daniel saw the daughter he remembered, not rebuilt, not restored, but wholly, defiantly herself. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. I know your time is valuable, and I really appreciate you sticking with it. Now, I spent hours putting this video together, writing, editing, making sure every detail was perfect just for you. If you enjoyed it, the least you can do is hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously, it takes just a second, but it makes a world of difference for someone who poured their heart and time into this. Don't let all that effort go unnoticed. Show some love and support.